start this episode, as a very passionate Warramungu Yari woman, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional custodians of the land we are recording this podcast from, and honour their ongoing connection to country, community and culture. I wouldn't be me without the sacrifices of my ancestors, and for that I pay my deepest respect and extend that respect with love to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and all elders past and present. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
Okay, Megan.
Yes, Zoe.
Wait, what's your middle name again?
Lee.
Megan Lee Waters.
What's yours?
Elizabeth.
Oh, Liz.
Ew.
Zoe, Liz, Walker, Klein.
Who abbreviates their middle name? Zoe Elizabeth Klein.
Is it Klein or is it Walker?
Oh, great point. Welcome to my identity crisis. It's technically Klein. I never changed my name.
Somewhere your name says Zoe Walker.
Yeah. I think when I'm a therapist, my name is Zoe Walker, but in everything else, my name is Zoe Klein. Very confusing.
Yeah.
I think I did it because I was going to change everything and I just never got around to it. And then I was just like, oh, I don't know if I care enough. I probably will one day, because I sort of see the value of like having a different therapy identity in terms of like sometimes I share, like even this podcast, for example, like sharing a little bit about personal life and things like that. But to be fair, I think it's just way more confusing than it needs to be.
But also I imagine it's probably a bit of a process to go through, isn't it?
Oh my God.
Have to change your name and
I think it just goes on and on for years. Like you're always finding new things. But
do you feel like this has maybe a little bit to do with it? Because I often think about wanting to hold on to my surname because it's my connection to my dad.
Yeah. Yes, because I'm the only girl. So I've got 3 brothers and they all have the same last name and I'm the only one who has or would have a different last name. And like my brothers used to be like, oh, we're kicking you out of the group chat.
Dicks.
Yeah, I know, rude. But yeah, I do feel that a little bit. I also just, I like my name. I feel connected to my name. But I also, I think it's also really beautiful to like take, like, I know that there's varying opinions on this, right? There's like the feminist opinion and all that. And I'm certainly not against changing my name at all. It's like purely for like logistical reasons. And I think there's something really beautiful actually about, like starting a new family with like my new name. And everyone always has this argument of, I want my kids to have the same last name as me. So I don't know. I don't have kids yet. Maybe when that happens, I will want to change my name. But a lot of my friends still call me Zoe Walker. Like I just, on paper, it's really anything goes. Call me whatever you want. Also, it was great to see you on the weekend.
It was good to see you on the weekend. That was a little random encounter. I was snoozing my alarm like on repeat for like half an hour. I was like, because I had to work on Sunday as well. So I was like, I was going to stay in bed a little bit longer and snoozed. And then I think it got to like 8 o'clock on Sunday and I got a message from you like, you up? Love a you up message.
Yeah, we love. No, because I wasn't in your street. I was at the end of your street getting a coffee because Guy was running a half marathon and I had cheered him on, but I knew I had a little bit of time until I was going to see him again. So I thought, I'll go for a walk and get a coffee. And then I thought I should just text Megzy and see if she's around. And you were.
I was. It got me up and out of bed and we had a beautiful walk and a coffee and cheered Guy on and it was such a nice day. Oh my, how much I know we hop on, but like the weather and the fact that we're now in summer is mind blowing. That I feel like we blinked and spring was like see ya. But it's so nice that summer has arrived and the sun, it's just.
But how good's an impromptu catch up?
Yeah.
I don't get them much these days.
Yeah.
You don't get that down the coast.
It was really nice.
It's lovely.
It just was served as a really nice reminder that I was able to literally wake up in my bed, warm and comfortable, and then walk downstairs and meet one of my best friends just down the road, which is where I get my coffee, and then wander along the beach and catch up with Guy while he was doing a run. And I was just like, sometimes when you have those little experiences, I walked away from that and I was like, fuck, we've got it. We're so lucky. And so, I felt really grateful that I got to see you on Sunday.
Loved it. What's news?
In the moment of recording this, I am 1 week away from having Invisalign put on. Oh, I feel so conflicted and weird about it. Like I'm excited about it. In my notes, I've got like a life task to-do list. Buy a new car was one of them this year. Invisalign, do my taxes, start the egg freezing journey, all of that. They've been my life tasks, and so I'm slowly chipping away at that. So I'm happy to say that the Invisalign story begins. I wish that I was smarter when I had braces and I wore my retainer, because I wouldn't be in this situation. Not that I have much to correct. Like, I've just got a little bit of protrusion of like my top front tooth, and I just see it a lot. So now, knowing how much more my face is a bit of a focal point for certain things, I just see this little crooked thing in my smile and I just want to recorrect it.
Does it hurt? Do you know?
Yeah, it does a little. Well,
Like, I remember when you had braces and you'd go and they'd like tighten them.
that
and
would
you're
be
like,
the
"Oh."
worst. The braces tightening was the worst. So I don't think it's as bad as that.
Okay.
But I think because your teeth shift so much, yeah, there's certain things like your gums and stuff like that obviously moves, and so with that there's going to be a little bit of pain associated. So I'm equal parts nervous, equal parts excited. Anyway, that is a life task tick.
Yeah. So yeah, we have such a great episode for you guys. We had a good friend of mine, an old friend of mine, Laura Miano, on the podcast. So Laura is a Melbourne-based sex therapist and educator. She's the director of sex therapy practice Miano Clinical Sexology. She's passionate about breaking down sexual stigmas and opening conversations that foster a deeper learning of one's own sexuality and desires. Laura's approach to sex therapy is empathetic, trauma-informed, and person-centered. You may have heard of her on Fox or 2Day FM, or read her work in publications like Vice or Fashion Journal. She also co-founded Melbourne-based sexual wellness brand Posmo. She uses Posmo as a platform to empower people to embrace their unique experience of sexuality. And she's just an all-round legend.
And it was such a pleasure, pardon the pun.
Nice.
Such a pleasure to actually meet Laura. I don't know, I just feel like the topic of sex and sexuality and pleasure and relationships and sex is such a big part of it. I just found the conversation so interesting, and I know you all will as well. And I think that there should be more emphasis on lifting the taboo on the topic of sex and sexuality, because it's all part of where we all do it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I shouldn't say all. Some people choose not to, but for the most part, it is a big part of the human experience. Having sex, procreating, masturbating, all that kind of thing.
But
so
another big reason, and like how this all relates to rushing slowly, is that often when we're highly stressed and when we have so many things on our to-do list, our libido like diminishes or like ceases to exist. And that can be to the detriment of the things that actually do help us to slow down, like having a good quality relationship or relationship with yourself. And so it can create almost like a negative feedback loop. It's like the more your libido goes, the less connected you might feel to others or to your partner, and therefore the more you might pour yourself into work, for example. So really wanted to chat to Laura about that. Like, how do you actually navigate, being a really busy person and also like maintaining a good sex life and sex drive? So I think we fulfilled the task, and I hope that you guys love it. Laura,
Hi.
welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a rite of passage here to have an awkward giggle at the beginning of any conversation. But yeah, it's so great to have you here. You and I have known each other, how long do you reckon?
Oh, gosh. Would it be 8 years?
Don't know.
It might be.
Yeah.
Like 2016?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have said longer, but no, that's probably about right. Anyway,
Yeah.
Laura and I know each other through just our friendship circles.
Yeah.
And have had actually lots of like correlations in our path. Because I remember when you were studying, was it psychology and then into sexology?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember when you were doing that, like often you would have to go because you've had uni or you were studying or whatever. And then when I had this seed planted that I was maybe going to study, I remember thinking to myself, as a mature age student in my mid to late 20s, well, if Laura's doing it, I feel like I can do it.
Yes.
And now here we both are, and we're both therapists, different kinds of therapists. But yeah, we got through it, and thanks for the motivation.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when you love what you do, it's easy to go back to school and study for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's so worth it, right?
Yeah.
Even though at the time you think like, oh my God, am I about to spend like 3 or 5 years of my life doing this thing? But then, like what we were just saying before we started recording, like all of a sudden you look back and you're like, that time feels non-existent.
I know.
And now
yeah.
you get to enjoy this like amazing profession that feels like, you know, exciting.
Absolutely. It's all
Yeah.
worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we always start this podcast by asking the question, what's keeping you rushing at the moment?
Yes. Well, I'm now a dual business owner, so that definitely keeps me rushing. Yeah, I have a sex therapy practice and also a sexual wellness brand. So I'm very, very busy. That's definitely what's keeping me rushing at the moment.
Well, Laura, it's so nice to meet you. I feel like this is a topic that I'm so fascinated and intrigued to learn more about. So to have you here is so exciting. But you just, gosh, and I can't wait to get into the topic of sexology and sex, but then also your business as well. There's so much that, there's so many paths that we can go down with this conversation. But to begin, and not just off the back of what Zoe said, and I didn't realize that you had also done a psychology. Did you do a psychology degree and a sexology degree?
Yeah. Well, I started studying psychology and I did my bachelor in psych. And I was maybe thinking of going down the path of psychology, but I realized I kind of wanted to do something that felt a little bit more fun in the other kind of realms of things that you can do in sexology, like having a sex toy brand and things like that. So it always felt like sexology was the right path to go down. But I do still love general psychology and all of, you know, that kind of area. But I kind of just pursue it more as a, I guess, like I read a lot and whatnot. But yeah, I'm so happy I chose sexology. In terms of how I got into or what made me decide to do it, I think from a younger age, I was always quite open and comfortable talking about sex. I would come to school and like joke with my friends about, you know, self-pleasure and things like that. So it always was something that I just felt very comfortable to talk about. I also used to listen to a lot of hip hop music when I was younger.
That'll do it.
Yes. And Lil Kim actually had this song, which I would liken to the modern day Cardi B WAP song. And what it kind of did for everyone, what Cardi B did with that song more recently is what Lil Kim did for me back in, you know, when I was 16, in that she just really, you know, empowers
Was
women.
that I want to let from your head? That song?
No,
Is that Lil Kim?
Oh, who's that? That's ludicrous.
Oh, totally different. What was the song? I'm intrigued.
It's Eat My Pussy Right.
Oh my gosh. And you know when that song comes on now, like sometimes comes on like in the gym and stuff, and I'm like, oh, I better skip that one.
Yeah.
Love it though.
It's so iconic. I love it. But yeah, it was kind of revolutionary back in that time because women especially weren't empowered to pursue their sexuality and their pleasure. So yeah, I think having that was a really big thing for me. I felt like I learned something really important and I wanted to share that with other people and yeah, empower other women to do the same. And then yeah, I guess it kind of started off being more focused on women, but now I really love seeing all people in my work. But yeah, it definitely did start in the realm of wanting to empower women sexually.
Do you think that your openness, like from a young age with sexuality and sex, came from somewhere? Like, was that modeled to you or like, where did that come from?
I think my mum was always very comfortable with, she always used to make little cheeky jokes about sex. And it was never, it was always something that, you know, the girls behind closed doors would joke about. And I think it just, yeah, created this safe space that sex is something that's a little bit cheeky. And yeah, it's a little bit, it's private, but, you know, you can have a little laugh about it and it's a safe space.
Yeah. Yeah, that's sweet.
It's amazing how much music actually, just going back to I mean, how influential that song was for you to be able to go, actually, this is something that really excites me and I want to go down this path. So I love that you shared that because that's obviously such a key pivotal part of this journey for you was little Kim, actually. What would you say is one of the most common sort of issues or problems that you're trying to solve for people in this space at the moment?
Yeah. Shifts in desire are a really big one. When someone kind of notices that they're desire has dropped, whether that's just for sex with their partner or sex with themselves as well, masturbation. Also, mismatch desire, when one person wants to have sex more than the other in a relationship and how they both navigate that. Sexual pain is also a big one that I deal with women and people with vulvas. On how to have pain-free penetrative sex. Also, premature ejaculation and erectile dysfunction. They're also really common ones that I see. Yeah.
Are there any other things that you see that are quite common, but other things that are unexpected?
What I have found is that often people will come to sex therapy when their body isn't responding the way that they want. And that's what usually prompts them to come to sex therapy. But what is really underlying that is, sexual anxiety, not being able to feel pleasure, or not knowing how to ask for what you want or know what you want. But people will usually just go along with that stuff and deal with it until their body starts to show them that they're not getting hard, or they're not having an orgasm, or they're not able to have penetrative sex. But it's, not really until those signs happen that people will act.
Right. It's like people wait until it's like a real problem
Yeah.
until they act. Yeah.
Yeah.
And where does the problem usually stem from? Are they controllable things like stress, for example, or are they genuinely like genetic things? You spoke about pain during sex, but particularly for vulva owners.
Yep.
And that's a really common conversation that I have with a lot of my girlfriends, actually, that sex is either one, not that enjoyable, like it's a little bit painful. And I always wonder, why? It's also really common to have this conversation that, women aren't orgasming and then they're feeling like they're not enough, and their partner's not feeling like they're able to make them feel satisfied. And there'd be so many factors that you would see and have to kind of combat. But is a lot of the problem conversation that you're having solvable? Are you noticing that things like stress are an impact or an influence on performance in the bedroom?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, stress plays a major role. Some of the biggest reasons that cause some of those concerns that I brought up before, people are really disconnected to their bodies when it comes to sex. They really struggle to listen to the subtle signs, the subtle messages of what their body is telling them to do. And that's because we are really misinformed about sex and pleasure in our culture. Because people use movies, they use porn to educate them on what sex should look like. So they'll often think their way through sex, and they won't listen to the really subtle signs that their body is telling them. As an example, someone might be kissing and they might really enjoy it. It might feel really sensual and beautiful, and they might feel really aroused and connected. But then maybe they do it for 5 minutes and they still want to keep doing it. They still really like it. But there's this little voice in their head that says, you should probably go to the next thing now. You should probably do the next thing, because, the kissing has gone for a bit too long now. And the movies, the porn, it wouldn't look like that on there. So we should go to the next thing. That's the little, the unconscious voice or the conscious voice. And then they'll go to the next thing, and it might still be good, but there's a missed opportunity for it to be great there, because they could have
Because you haven't sat in that sensual foreplay moment you haven't given it the time that it deserves.
That's an example of their body telling them one thing, their body wanting to keep kissing, they want to keep moving their lips, all of that stuff, but they kind of override it and they think, let's go to the next thing.
So if one of the reasons is that people aren't kind of sensitive to listening to the cues of their body, how do you teach them how to do that?
So it's essentially a body attunement. It's being more aware and more attuned to the sensations in your body. First, I'll kind of just educate them on what that is, and I'll explain that it happens to them every day outside of sex as well. So, I might give an example. If you are walking down the street and you see a cute fluffy dog, you might feel like, you'll smile, and you might feel an urge to go over and pat the dog. And there's all these little subtle sensations that are happening in your body that are telling you to go towards that. But if you saw a scary dog, you might feel tightness in your chest. You might automatically step back. And there's all of those kind of sensory, there are a whole range of sensory kind of elements that make up that as well. So what's kind of happening there is your body is telling you what choice to make, what choice is best.
Mm-hmm.
So during sex, the same thing will happen, just, it might be a little bit more subtle. But it will be, someone might be kissing you and then maybe they put their hands on your genitals and it's a little bit too premature.
Mm-hmm.
You might notice a little subtle, maybe it's a very subtle like sinking in your chest just for a second. It's not really intense, but it's small. Or maybe you feel like your legs kind of close up a little bit when that happens. And that's where I would say try to just notice those little subtle things, because that's your body telling you that's a bit too soon. So yeah, I would get them to even just have a few sexual experiences observing, writing down what they noticed. When they touched here, I felt like this, or, when I allowed myself to give this certain act the right amount of time, I felt this. Just awareness to begin with. And then once they have more awareness of it, they're basically practicing that, that's strengthening the part of the brain that's more aware of their body. And from that point, it's about acting on it really, which can bring up a whole other array of challenges, because it's one thing to know what you like, but then it's another thing to assert it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. In a vulnerable space like sex, it can be quite hard to do that.
Well, and especially if you're not having sex with somebody that is familiar, like you're single and you're sleeping with somebody for the first or second, third time, and you're still a little like unsure of each other. Like, how do you go about that?
But even when they are familiar, because if you're trying this for the first time and if you've been like unconsciously intimate for a really long time and then all of a sudden you start to be like more assertive, maybe with someone that you've been with for years and years and years, I imagine that would also feel pretty vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely.
True.
Yeah, it can happen in long-term relationships just as much. Sometimes when it's with a new person, there is less vulnerability because you don't know them, and
Like
you
lower
can just,
risk almost.
lower
It's like you might
risk.
never see them again.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
could ghost.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so you can kind of put out whoever you want to put out in that moment of yourself. But someone that knows you so well, yeah, it is a little bit higher risk and a bit more scarier to then all of a sudden do something that's completely different to what you did that last time.
One of the things is people struggle to like attune to the sensations of their body and like to connect with their own needs, I guess. Are there any other kind of main contributing things that might determine why someone then experiences something that lands them in your office, like those kind of things you mentioned before, like the erectile dysfunction?
Yeah, I mean, trauma can play a role in a lack of body attunement as well. So sexual trauma, where, yeah, I guess people have had experiences where they haven't been able to listen to what their body wants. And so, yeah, again, it can be that they shut themselves off from listening to what their body wants in future experiences. Stress would be another reason why, because I guess when you're stressed, you're not in your body really. You're out of you're tense, your sympathetic nervous system is engaged, and it's not the most relaxed, mindful state.
One of the main reasons that we wanted to get you on the podcast is almost for that exact reason, like acknowledging that the people who are listening to this are the ones who are extremely ambitious, quite successful, meaning that their schedules are jam-packed, and they're also really interested in their well-being. So in any spare moments of time, they're at the gym or they're going for a run or they're playing sport or whatever they're doing, which oftentimes can, not always, kind of deprioritize their relationships. And so this idea of stress and sex feels so important. And like personally, right? Like how do you maintain a good sex life and therefore a healthy relationship when you are so stressed because your ambition keeps you rushing?
Yeah, I see this a lot, especially with long-term clients who are struggling to keep the spark alive and have sex and desire sex. When someone, they prioritize work, exercise, friends, social life, all of that stuff, often their partner becomes the person that gets the end of the day then.
Yes.
Mhm.
Oh my God, that is so relatable.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
Not me.
Tired. Yeah.
I wouldn't do that.
It's such an interesting thing because I'm not in a relationship at the moment, but if I reflect on previous relationships, which were very loving, but and being somebody who has got a relatively high sex drive and enjoys intimacy and that kind of stuff, first thing to go to the point that like I have honestly questioned, and I'm like, I get 3-4 months down the track and the honeymoon phase wears off, and then I'm like, I actually don't think I like sex anymore. Sex, I don't like it. I don't enjoy it, which is actually so not true. Like I said, intimacy is a really, and physical touch is a really important thing for me in a relationship. And yeah, I can still love this person, but why do I not want to have sex with them? It's like that end of the day thing. I'm just like,
Well, I wonder if it kind of comes back to that idea of body attunement again, because when we first start dating someone, there are so many other factors that lead us to want to have sex with them. You are forming a new attachment, so just that in itself makes you more drawn to them. But you know, there's so many other like little chemicals that are being released that are promoting that desire. When that wears off, then we're kind of left with what we truly, truly need in order to feel pleasure and feel aroused. And that's when, if we haven't been listening to those little subtle signs before and just relying on all that other stuff to get us aroused, it's kind of exposed, I guess, after that other stuff wears off. One really big factor in like reducing cortisol levels and reducing stress is physical touch. You know, if you can have someone be physically affectionate to you and touch you, that can reduce stress levels. And I would wonder if maybe that, you know, was an option at the end of the day with your sexual partner without sex needing to be assumed, if that, you know, if you would actually want to touch them, which again is body attunement, because you're realizing, okay, I actually just want to do the touch right now. I don't want to do the sex. But I guess there is this idea that if we start the touch, the sex needs to happen. You know, it's that thinking about it again.
would you then maybe advise to clients in that situation that really communication is what would be the key there? It's like having to be really open and vulnerable and just say, look, like, I love you and I really just need a hug right now. But if you try anything more, it ain't happening. Like, is that what you kind of say? Like, just having to have that really open, real conversation.
Well, I talk a lot about boundaries in my work. A lot of my work is about helping people assert their sexual boundaries. Because again, this idea that if you get started with one thing, then you got to do the whole thing sexually. And yeah, I'll empower people to feel really confident about their sexual boundaries. And when they do feel confident and like there's nothing wrong with them asserting it, they have more confidence in how they communicate it. And they can actually communicate it in a way that is arousing and adds to the future sexual experience that you're going to have. An example could be, you know, if you wanted that hug at the end of the day, but you felt a lot of shame around like not wanting to have more sex, not wanting to have sex after, you could say, yeah, I want the hug, but I don't want sex after. Sorry, is that okay? And it's, you know, there's a bit of shame that underlies that.
Yeah, like even saying sorry, right?
Yeah.
Like assuming that.
Yeah, something to be sorry for. Yeah. Or you could say it with confidence and say, yeah, like 100%. I want a hug, but no sex tonight. I can't do that tonight. Would love to do that maybe tomorrow, but just tonight, just come and hug me. I just want to feel you, you know? And you can say it in confidence, and that keeps the two of you connected. And it's also a little bit cheeky, and it can be, you know, arousing as well.
What about for the person who just doesn't even want the hug?
Well, yeah, I guess in that case, you can still stay connected in that you know, if their partner is wanting a hug, you could say, you know, I love you, thank you. I know you want to be like physically affectionate right now. I just think I need a little bit of space. Is that okay?
Libido.
Yeah.
Because I guess what we're talking about here is that when you're stressed, your libido is compromised because you're in that sympathetic state in your nervous system. Often, and maybe like personally for me, sex is just the last thing that I'm even thinking about when I'm stressed. Like when I have a million things on my mind, especially like being a business owner, we speak so much about this, like, there's always something to be thinking about. And actually that's true in any kind of high responsibility role, whether you're a business owner or not. There's always something to be thinking about. And so even like the thought of initiating sex is so far from my mind. But then the other thing is that when the other person also tries to initiate sex, it's almost like I'm offended that you can't tell how stressed I am, that you even think that would be what I'm interested in right now. So I hear like physical touch is like a nice way actually to calm stress down. But like, how else do you work with people who feel as though their libido is like through the floor?
Yeah, because of stress.
Yeah.
First, I would kind of understand a little bit about their lifestyle in general, how they manage their stress, their work stress, how they switch off. Do they, have kind of wellness, I guess, like a kind of wellness routine? Do they do some breath work? Do they do yoga? Do they do meditation? Things like that, exercise. I would just be kind of looking at how much they allow themselves to de-stress, because you can have two people with the same level of stress, but one person actively works on reducing it, and then their stress is lower, and then someone that maybe does some more not so productive ways of managing stress, like maybe they might have big nights after a long week of work, which is okay. But if that's, every weekend and that's the main source of reducing stress, then that's not really going to be very helpful. I would ask them about what they think they need right now in terms of intimacy with their partner. Because again, going back to this idea of when we think sex needs to happen a certain way, it needs to be kissing into oral sex or into foreplay, into intercourse and orgasm within a 20-minute period, if that's what people are used to doing.
Like the textbook sex situation.
Yeah. If they don't feel like, if they're too stressed, they're not going to feel like doing that. That particular time period or that particular day, I would say they need a lot more winding down things. They might need to just hang out in bed with their partner and just talk about the day, have empathy shown, give empathy, that kind of thing. That's like the therapist in me kind of analyzing what that experience essentially is. But yeah, just connecting, slowing down with each other. Then maybe after that, also while that conversation is happening, there might be some little like stroking on the leg and just like all these nice subtle things that help to put you in the mood. And then when you've had that kind of experience with someone and it's not this rushed pressure, it's happening against what you truly feel like doing, that feels so nice. You feel really connected. You feel like you really trust that experience. And then because you've almost reduced your stress levels and that person has been the source of that, you feel so connected to them. And then you want to touch them more. And then you want to connect more. And then that's when sex can just happen naturally from there. But even once it gets started, again, it might need to be slower than usual. So more kissing, more full body touching, more stimulation might be needed to get to orgasm. But yeah, I would really help clients to figure out what it is they truly need within this period now that looks different to what they would usually need.
Yeah, I find that really resonates when I think back to previous longer term relationships, because it became very evident in our relationship early on that there was a disconnect, and then the lack of just sex happening effortlessly became this issue, and it would then be one that we would talk about, and then it was like this pressure, and it almost got to kind of draw an example of what it felt like for me in the end. It would be like when, I'm sitting down at my mum's house watching, a movie or something, and I want to do the dishes. I'll do the dishes to help my mum out, but I'll do them like in my own time. Whereas I've got like my mum in the background like nagging me to do the dishes, and I'm like, it would make me want to do it less and less and less and less. And that's what it got like. You know what I mean? That's what it got like with sex. It was like the more that we talked about it and the more pressure, the more I was like, I literally, like, if we talk about it one more time, we're literally never having sex ever again at that point. Why does it also always have to be about sex? Like, there's this great big pressure on this word sex. But for me, I feel like intimacy, like, I could lay next to somebody and just like kiss for like 2 hours. Like, it usually would lead to sex, that kind of thing. But I feel like having to take the pressure of it always just being about sex, like enjoy the moment of like just kissing for an hour and then see where it takes you. And like you just explaining like the tickling of the leg. As I tickle Zoe's leg. Sorry, I just had to touch you then.
It's welcome.
I was feeling you say, I mean, like, you know, that really landed with me because
Megzy's practicing her body attunement.
Yes,
I was
perfect.
like, oh,
Good.
you saying that, I was like, oh, that feels really nice. Like, because usually that then leads to the end goal. Let's just take that pressure off it just being about getting to the finish line and the orgasm and the sex. Like, simmer in that really juicy goodness that is the lead up to.
How do you actually define sex?
I say sex is a sexual experience. So I refer to sex as outer course, intercourse. But, you know, there's also tantric sex where people don't even necessarily touch each other's genitals.
Oh, yeah. Talk more about that. What's that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I might not be the best person to completely define tantric sex, but I mean, from what I know about it, it is when people, you know, it's more of a like an emotional connection. It's using connection to get aroused rather than physical touch per se. And I know one practice that I have read about once was, you know, people looking in each other's eyes and kind of moving, like sitting with their legs crossed and kind of moving their hips around and eye gazing. And that can be a form of tantric sex.
Yeah.
And the idea is they might be getting aroused, but it's mainly on the connection. So sex is really, I would say, everyone's right to define for themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's definitely more than just intercourse, which is what a lot of people think.
This might be different for everyone, but what would you say defines good sex?
Good sex, I would say, is when you are enjoying yourself. You feel connected to the person that you're having sex with. And, you know, you're really aware of the body attunement. Again, you're aware of what you need. You ask for what you need. The other person respects what you need. There's good communication, whether it's verbal or non-verbal. There's good flow. And yeah, I guess there's good sex and then there's great sex. And good sex is still good sex. It's not bad. It's that, you know, it's a nice sexual experience. And yeah, I just want to kind of normalize that as there's a spectrum and all of the things, as long as there's pleasure and consent and you're feeling good and you're understanding each other, then all of those things are good sex.
Then what makes the difference between good sex and great sex?
I would say great sex is when the body attunement is extremely on. You're getting everything. You're like all of the messages that your body are telling you, moment to moment, are, you know, almost exactly in line with what you want. Which, you know, it's when you're having sex with another person, it's hard to have every single thing always aligning, you know, to the when you both have maximum pleasure. But yeah, I would say great sex is when there's flow and there is that maximum pleasure for both of you. And you really, really get taken, you know, to another place, you know, and an you really get taken to another place in terms of you have like an altered state of consciousness. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah.
I want to then talk to the orgasm. I've had many conversations with a lot of my girlfriends that really struggle to have orgasms. And I think that it feels like the orgasm is the pinnacle. Like once you hit that orgasm moment, you're there. Like that, the great sex is done. Some women, I don't know, maybe men as well, but I've only had really conversations with women, actually can't orgasm or can't have penetrative orgasms. They are only orgasm from clit stimulation and that kind of thing. So is that something that is a conversation that you have a lot with clients, that becomes a bit of an issue in relationships, that a partner isn't, say, able to make their sorry, a partner isn't able to make their partner orgasm.
Yeah, I mean, people can really get quite focused on the orgasm because it's a physiological sign, physical sign that the person is really enjoying themselves. But there are so many other little subtle ways that good sex can happen. In how you look at each other, touch each other, talk to each other, let go around each other, the flow of sex, going back to that again. Um, but sometimes people kind of overlook those things because they're waiting for the bigger sign that's the most affirming sign of all. But yeah, I guess for clients like that, I would help them to focus on all of those more subtle things that are happening, because in some cases, people, when there's so much pressure to orgasm, it makes it harder for that person to orgasm. So if the partner of someone that's not orgasming is showing them so much how much they want it, they might actually be making it go further away. Yeah, I would be kind of decentralizing the orgasm and making it all about the other things. And also getting the other person maybe to affirm the person that's not orgasming, affirming maybe the other partner a little bit more. Maybe the other partner needs to hear how much they love sex. Because if they use the orgasm as that, communication, that message, maybe they need to hear it in other ways. Yeah.
Is there a reason physiologically why some women can't have a penetration orgasm? Like, or really struggle to?
Clitoral orgasms are a lot easier because, I mean, when you're rubbing your clitoris, you're really close to the clitoris is quite densely packed with pleasure receptors. So it's really easy it's a lot easier to feel the pleasure, build up that arousal from clitoral stimulation. There's basically a lot of different neural networks inside the vulva, the vagina. And there's a bunch of neural networks that are like more superficial near the clitoris. But then there are a bunch that are kind of further behind the, deeper, but it's harder to stimulate them. And you stimulate them with penetration, but it's harder to kind of activate them. So that's why in more physiological technical terms, it is harder to have a penetrative orgasm.
So it's just like different people's anatomy, essentially.
100%.
Is what kind of it boils down to in simple terms.
Yeah. There's a really great book called The Women's Anatomy of Arousal by Sherry Winston.
Oh.
It is fascinating, and it talks all about neural networks, arousal tissue, all of this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay, we'll put that book in the show notes. That's so interesting. And I also imagine that there's like gender roles, right? Like, the male orgasm is the pinnacle of sex in many ways, and so that creates like pressure for the woman to feel like she also has to orgasm, and yeah, there's complexities in that. But you also mentioned before like this idea of differing desires, and I'm really interested in that. Like, how do you work with people where one partner has a really high sex drive and the other partner might not, and maybe it's seasonal, right? Like maybe it's because one partner is highly stressed for a certain period of time, but nonetheless that can cause tension in a relationship.
Yeah, I mean, when I work with mismatched desire, it's often, not all the time though, but often in heterosexual relationships, the man that would want sex more, and the woman doesn't want it as much. So yeah, how do I work with it? I will often, so one, body attunement, going back to that, it's so key to my work. I will help the woman understand what she needs and to be more aware of what her body is telling her. Because often she'll come to therapy and say, I don't know what I want. And there might have been some moments during sex where he says, what do you want? She'll say, I don't know. But then I'll, as we're talking, she might say, and there's no one in particular, this happens so many times in my therapy sessions, that this is an example of what someone might say, that, they just really wanted to hang out in bed and keep kissing that one time, for example. And then I'll say, hey, that's actually you telling me what you need. And so I'll help them understand what all these little things that they need. And it's often all of the stuff that happens before sex. It's maybe relationship stuff. It's maybe not feeling desired in an intellectual, emotional sense. Maybe their partner isn't, unpacking their day with them and giving them time to just talk and show interest in the things that interest them. But if the relationship is generally all pretty good, then yeah, it might come down to these more kind of intimacy moments. How they lead up to sex. Is it going slow enough for them? Are they able to assert their boundaries? If they do feel like just doing a little bit of kissing, a little bit of cute, I don't know, touching, or maybe they want to walk around the house in their lingerie. They don't want to have sex, but they just want to walk around. They want to tease their partner a little bit. They want to feel desired by him. They might have stopped doing that stuff because they feel shame about not having sex. But I will say to them, start doing that stuff again. And if your partner wants sex, go over and give him a kiss. Say, thank you. I love that you desire me right now, but I just don't feel like it. But maybe we can try in however long. But just keeping it fun and keeping the flirtiness, the eroticism in the relationship. So yeah, I would work most of the time with all of the things that surround sex. And then there's also the sex itself. So, figuring out if it is actually the sex that they want to be having. Are there little things that could be changed? Yeah, I mean, I guess just really unpacking what their sexual experiences are like, and if they feel like it is really aligned to their pleasure and they're able to get aroused. Yeah.
I heard this thing once. I can't remember where. Maybe I read it in a book. Because obviously, like, rejection can be really prevalent, right? If one partner is constantly initiating sex and the other partner is constantly saying no, well, of course, that partner is going to feel, not of course, but potentially might feel rejected.
Yeah.
And I read something somewhere which was that if your partner initiates sex and you say no, then you should be the next person to initiate. Right? Like if you said no, then your job is to wait until, you feel ready or like you want to, and then it's your job to initiate. So that there's like this quality of turn taking, so that it's not always on the responsibility of one partner, which also still gives you the autonomy to say no when you don't want to.
Yeah.
But because that really resonated with me, right? Because I fall into this category of being highly stressed, and then like sexual desire it's just as I said before, it's the last thing on my mind. And yet simultaneously I can acknowledge that can be incredibly rejecting when I'm constantly like, no, I'm not in the mood, I'm too busy, it's not like whatever. And so having that permission, it's like, it's okay to say no, but you can't keep falling back on this excuse of busyness and therefore let your relationship suffer as a result.
Yeah.
And so I kind of liked that, because it sort of like gave me a bit of a kick up the bum to be like, it's okay to say no, but that means that it's then on you to then figure out when it does feel right for me and to then initiate.
Yeah, there is a lot of rejection on the higher desire partner side. And often a lot of it comes from, over time especially, the lower desire partner might avoid more and more and more. And they might avoid going to bed at the same time. They might, when their sexual partner touches them, they might just like not say anything and just be on the other side of the bed, stiff. And a lot of the times that is the rejection that the higher desire partner is feeling. And again, that comes from shame from the lower desire partner around not wanting to have sex. So I'll get the lower desire partner to work on the shame and to work on just feeling really confident around their boundaries. And what will usually happen is they'll stay engaged. They'll, their partner might be going for a more sexual touch and they'll be like, no, I just don't feel like it tonight, but kiss me, because they do feel like having a kiss, or they do feel like having a cuddle. And then that can help to, just not make that higher desire partner feel so rejected. Yeah.
Right. Like it's not a firm no.
Yeah.
It's not what you want, but I would like to do this instead.
Yeah. It's a bit more of a compromise.
What I'm hearing in all of this is just being able to freely communicate with each other those boundaries. But I actually am really fascinated in your therapy practice. And how do people actually go about coming to see you? Because I know in the past when I've been in relationships where that desire goes. When I've been in those moments, I'm like, oh, I need to go and see a sexologist. But then I get this, I don't know, there's almost like a bit of a internal fear or like shame associated. So is that something that is common for people, that they maybe hold themselves back a little bit? How do people approach you, and what's your first session like? How do people find you in therapy?
When you say fear, is it that fear that you might figure out something's wrong or something like that? Yeah.
Figure out something's wrong, but also like maybe not fear, probably the wrong word, more so shame. Because and acknowledging in that relationship perhaps that like, oh, we really have a problem here.
Oh, like acknowledging a problem. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
relatable.
like
Yeah.
if I've got to go see a sexologist, we've got a problem. So like that shame associated with that and carrying that guilt, because I knew that a lot of the mismatched desire probably was from my part in previous relationships, because I, you know, for whatever reason, it just got lost along the way. So that was what held me back. But in fact, like seeing a sexologist is probably the number one best thing you could possibly do. So how does one come find you?
I mean, a lot of the times people experience that. They are afraid of what they're going to uncover in the process of sex therapy. But a lot of the times it's normalizing what they're experiencing. It's not that there's something wrong or, I mean, when it comes to couples, it's about understanding each other. And there might be a few little challenges on the way to that, to understanding each other. Sometimes you have to talk about past things that haven't been resolved and stuff like that. But yeah, it's often a process of understanding that all of these things you're feeling right now are completely understandable given the context. And then when you can understand why you feel this way, then we can put a treatment plan together and figure out how you can work through those things and overcome them. So yeah, I would say it's a very empowering and insightful process. But yeah, for people that do want to find me, my clinic is called Miano Clinical Sexology, and it's mianoclinicalsexology.com.au. And yeah, people can just book an appointment in, and it always starts with a bit of an intake session where I ask lots of different questions about lots of different areas of their life and get a good understanding of who they are. And then we'll start to kind of go into the nitty-gritty of why they're experiencing what they're experiencing, and I'll come up with a treatment plan with them. And we'll kind of put some things in place and go from there.
Yeah, I guess it's stigma, right? Like it's still kind of taboo to talk about sex and to talk about your sex life openly.
Yeah.
And like I think the same is true also for mental health, because a lot of people also avoid coming to see me to see a therapist because of the stigma associated. It's embarrassing that I can't deal with it on my own, or it means that I'm weak, or it means that I failed. Where actually like therapy is like about totally validating the experience. It's like nothing ever shocks me. You could say the most rogue thing and I've probably heard it before or I've heard it in some other way.
Yeah.
And so like, to be affirmed in that way is like the most destigmatizing thing, but it's like getting people in the door. But I imagine for sex therapy, you're combining two stigmas together. It's therapy, which is already like a bit stigmatized, and sex. So it's like, can really understand why that would be scary for people. But I know that you work in such a way that like really is around destigmatizing, which is why your content on socials is amazing, because you
Thank you.
post what other people might consider like rogue questions or like, but there's nothing rogue about them. It's just like openness and things that we are all thinking. We're all thinking.
Yeah.
But you actually ask them out loud. So even like just to look through your socials, like, and also like for someone who doesn't actually feel comfortable to cross the line of seeing a practitioner, like just start to immerse yourself in the world of sex, like follow a couple of sex positive accounts, for example, that just help to like, anyway, this is what I've done anyway, because you have just started this practice, but this is new for you. So what made you decide to open your own thing?
Yeah, I mean, I always said by the age of 30, I wanted to have my own practice. So finally did that.
How old are you now?
30.
Right on track.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I love being a business owner. It's been really fun to do with Posmo, the sexual wellness brand. And
yes, can't wait to get into that conversation next, actually.
Yeah, I've been kind of learning a lot about how to run a practice. I've been absorbing a lot of information, and it just really felt like the right time. I was definitely quite focused on Posmo for a few years, and I feel like getting a little bit older, I kind of just felt like it was the right time to go into my own thing with sex therapy, because I was working for another practice with Miss Chantel, and she was an amazing support, really mentored me, and yeah, I just felt like I had the skills to then go off into the world on my own. So
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's
Thank
such
you.
an epic step. And those steps that you've taken, they've obviously led you to this point. You know, you've worked under somebody, you've been mentored by somebody, you've learnt all of these things, you've had all of these experiences to the point that you've now built this confidence for you to be able to go and spread your wings and have your own impact and your own practice. It's so epic. That really does feel like the journey, you know, of learning and absorbing. And I want to go back to Posmo actually. Posmo is a sex toy brand, or
Yep.
Firstly, where did that begin?
It happened when I was studying. I was doing my my masters, and so my business partner, he said to me, "Should we start a sex toy store?" And I thought it was this crazy idea, but I was like, "Yes, 100%, let's do it." I was studying a lot about queer theory at the time, which is about kind of removing that. They say that sexual orientations can be problematic because they box people into needing to have sex with a certain gender, and if you don't have sex within those boundaries, then you might be another type of sexuality. Plus a whole range of other things. Queer theory is a very extensive theory, but I just really love this idea of sexuality is so individual and so complex, and for us to label our sexuality based on simply the gender of the person that we're attracted to, it's so limiting, and it doesn't, encapsulate anywhere near enough of what sexuality is. So yeah, I really wanted to start Posmo with that kind of as the message. And so Posmo is, so queer theory, another word for it is postmodern sexuality, postmodern theory. So the name Posmo comes from that postmodern sexuality. And yeah, so that was kind of the philosophy of it. And yeah, we stock pleasure products, sex toys. We have our own lube now as well, the Posmo branded lube. And we also have run a couple of parties in the past. We also do treasure hunts around Melbourne where we hide sex toys into the different locations. And
You just
give
did
people,
one recently, right?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we give people clues and on how to find it. And I think, going back to this idea that sex is more than or sexuality is more than just having sex itself. It's about pleasure and connecting to pleasure. That's why we wanted to do parties and treasure hunts and all these fun things, just to endorse pleasure in all of the senses.
What's the hardest thing about running a product-based business?
I mean, I guess with Posmo we have a lot of products. We stock probably 100 and something products. So there's a lot of product to manage, but also a lot of education, because I like to do a lot of education around the toys to help people understand how to use them, things like that. So that can definitely be a challenge, just trying to navigate all of that, market it.
Do you have a team and a warehouse and that distributes all of that, and it's all Posmo branded?
No.
Okay.
So the lube is ours,
Yeah.
but then we're also a retailer. So
Got
we stock
you.
other brands. Yeah.
Toys.
Yeah. There's three of us. Yeah. Me, Liam, my business partner, and Miller, who's our marketing queen.
Amazing. And is Liam still sending out all of the orders? Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. Okay, so in terms of sex toys, I'm a big advocate for sex toys for that reason. Pleasure should be fun, and I think in order to feel confident with a partner, I like to know how to pleasure myself, and that usually is, with different pleasure toys. But I've seen lots of conflicting things that go online here and there, and where people advise against not using sex toys because it desensitizes you to sex, and you get so conditioned to pleasuring yourself that when it comes to having sex with somebody or pleasure with somebody else, that it's makes it harder. Is that something that's common? Do you hear that a lot?
The part that I would say is true is that if you rely on your vibrator when you masturbate, you might find that it is harder to reach orgasm with a sexual partner. Not all the time, because, you know, when you have a sexual partner there, you also have so many other new elements to that experience that are beyond just you. What could be a little bit more consistent with that, I guess, belief is masturbating. If you're used to always masturbating with a vibrator and then you take the vibrator away, or, you know, you go on a holiday and you forget your vibrator, you might find it hard to orgasm. But the idea is that you bring in variety. And I always talk about this, that, you know, you can condition your sexual response to respond to just one type of stimulation, and then you will need to rely on that type of stimulation. And that's with everything. If you're used to like stimulating your clit with your fingers and that's the only way you do it, you will be conditioned to that. So in the same way, sex toys are no different. So I always promote the idea of bring in variety. Try it with a sex toy sometimes, try it with fingers another time. Bring different variety in, because then that makes you more practiced at, seeing a different type of variety, seeing a different option, and then feeling like you can explore it.
So being a dual business owner, as you call it, I mean, that I'm assuming that means that you have a lot on your plate, which I guess is what you mentioned is keeping you rushing. How do you actually split your time between these things?
Mondays I do admin, marketing, all of the loose ends of running the practice. Tuesday I see clients, Thursday clients as well. Wednesday are a big Posmo day where Liam Miller and I get together. And then Friday I'll mix it up between doing like professional development, educational lectures, things like that. And then also other marketing, admin, all of that kind of stuff. And then sometimes I'll see clients on a Saturday as well, but just at the start.
Yeah. How do you find that balance in your week?
It's good. I really like having Posmo in the middle of the week because it breaks it up. And I like having clients on a Tuesday and a Thursday because there's one day in between that breaks it up again. And I love the idea of a Monday and a Friday being me time.
Yeah.
You know, there's no Posmo, there's no clients. It's just me to work on my things, which I like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in terms of like sustainability, how do you run these businesses in a way that like feels like you can keep going for a long time?
Having such different days helps me because every single day is so different and I'm focusing on a whole different things. I'm also working in a different space. I like to change it up. Sometimes like Posmo days are in a different location. I like to work at cafes, so I'll go and do that on like a Monday, sometimes on a Friday as well, or then I'll work from home. So I'm always in a different location, which really helps me to feel motivated for that day. If I did the same location every day, I wouldn't last. No way. And I mean, on top of that, I also, you know, prioritize wellness. I always like to, you know, I've just actually started at a new kind of wellness gym and it's been really good for me to do, you know, contrast therapy, like cold plunge and sauna.
Which gym?
Been so good. Saints.
Oh, nice.
yeah, that's
in Gilda.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Yeah, breath
And
work.
they have everything in there, don't they? They've got like all of the modalities under that one hub.
Yeah. So that's been really good. And then the gym, I love going and doing weights at the gym. So yeah, exercise is a big part of my schedule as well. It helps.
What about like the mental load, like of having so many open tabs in your mind? How do you? I mean, does that feel true for you?
It's a good question how I manage that. I'm quite a hyperactive person, so it feels kind of natural and normal. Sometimes, you know, the people around me are like, "Oh my God, Laura, slow down. You need to slow down." But I mean, I'm happy, and I have had burnout previously, but I always know that if that is coming on, I just cancel everything, and I, you know, really, really give myself time. Like when I actually launched, I felt like I was a little bit burnt out after that, and yeah, I took like a 6-day weekend and just put everything else aside because I knew that I needed to do that. And then I've been okay since.
You know, it's that thing when you love what you do, you just kind of make it work. Like you're obviously so passionate about your work and you can just hear it when you speak. It's, you embody it. And so when you are that, you know, you kind of just push through and it kind of feels enjoyable, but it's like finding a little bit of that balance. I want to ask with your therapy, just a question. Can people see you online or is it just in your space?
Yep. Both online and in Paran.
Yeah. Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Your relationship with success? Like, what does success
Mm.
actually mean for you?
Success means that I am achieving, I guess, my business goals of my business is doing well, them being able to grow, and yeah, being able to have more people amongst the business. That's, I guess, from a business perspective. But I mean, all of those things wouldn't really matter if I was so stressed, so overwhelmed, so overworked, and unhappy. So, I mean, it needs to be a balance of having those things and then being able to enjoy my life. And I guess, yeah, like having, close relationships with my friends and my family and the people around me, looking after myself. But then, with hopefully the success of the businesses, then being able to do other things that, yeah, where I can enjoy my time and whatnot.
Well, one of the reasons that we started this podcast was to try to answer this question, like, is it possible to be highly ambitious and like striving for success in career and business and material, and
Yeah.
financial, whilst also maintaining our health and well-being? Where do you sit on that spectrum? Do you think it's possible?
Yes, I think it's possible. I guess I would say, and I don't know if this is the right answer to say, but I think when for example, if I have the kind of success I want to have, I'll then be able to have resources to be able to go and do nice things that make me feel good, like going out for nice dinners with friends that really fulfill me, or going, on a retreat or something like that. So I guess when I think about having more success, I also think about having like investing more in my wellness as well. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great answer. I love that. Yeah. Is there any questions that we haven't asked you yet that we should have?
Okay, if I could give one message about sex, it would be to prioritize connection. Prioritize the connection with the person that you're having sex with over everything running as it should, because sex is all about connection. But every single time that I help clients overcome sexual challenges, it is 99% of the time that they just weren't as connected with their sexual partner. So, yeah, if I could leave on one message, I would say connect more.
I want to ask you in terms of your connection to self, and obviously we've talked about how busy you are running multiple businesses, and what's helping you maintain that connection with self and helping you to actually slow down?
The biggest thing, yeah, for me would be that I've been investing more on the wellness side of things. I've been going to the gym and walking. That I've been doing that for a couple of years now, but it's like high intensity kind of stuff. And only just recently have I started doing more of the slowing down things, like yin yoga has been really good, the cold contrast therapy, breathwork classes. All of those things have been so helpful for me because as I was saying before, I run quite high energy, and it can be a bit it doesn't come really naturally for me to slow down. So I've been doing these classes, which has been super, super helpful to force myself to slow down. And it has been incredibly impactful. Yeah.
How do, like, knowing that doesn't come naturally to you, how do you motivate yourself?
Well, I think because I do it in a class setting,
Yeah.
there's, I can't really just start scrolling through my phone or doing something else randomly because I would disrupt the class. So I think forcing me into this environment, and then getting me to slow down that way, it's been amazing for me.
Yeah, epic. Great strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, those class settings, it's like when you're booked in somewhere as well, it's like that extra accountability to actually have to show up.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Laura. We are so lucky to have your insights and your knowledge on all of this kind of stuff. And you've already sort of touched on it, but for people who do want to find you and contact you, where would they do that?
Yeah, so my website is mianoclinicalsexology.com.au. My Instagram's Laura Miano Sexology as well. And yeah, contact me on either of those platforms.
Yeah, amazing.
Thank you so much. And I think it's so important that we have these conversations because, like we said before, destigmatizing topics that shouldn't be stigmatized. Like it's a natural part of our human existence to sex and procreate and all of those things. So thank you for making the space feel so safe.
Of course.
And
of
as I said
course.
before, we're all thinking it, but you just say it.
Yeah. I love it. Yes, that's what I'm here to
I'll be
do.
the most watched. You know, when you look at your Instagram story and you can see
Yeah.
who's like the first person at the top, that'll be me.
Yeah, yeah.
From now on, watching
Perfect.
your stories.
Perfect.
Amazing. All right.
Thanks, Laura.
No worries. Thank you. Thanks so much.
The content discussed in this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If any of the topics we've covered today feel overwhelming, we recommend seeking individual support. If you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14 or 13 Yarn on 13 92 76.